Hey guys, hope you had a great week. Got another great project for you. And by the end of this one, you should know pretty much everything about how to put a general multicam clip together and edit it and export it. So here we go. So let's think back all the way to when we did our original multicam project, right? You guys had 5 angles, right? And you just cut between them depending on what you thought looked good at the time. Now, I did a lot of the work up front, just doing basic grading. Like, I really didn't spend a lot of time on it. I just didn't want it to look unfinished so that you wouldn't be, like, staring at it like, oh, this one looks weird. Like, and I didn't want you to have to think about it. So that's really all I did. This time around, it's going to be a little bit different. So in here, like we had talked about last time, how when you drag in everything, you kind of want it to be in your individual folders. So let's just pretend that we're going to do that right now. Let's go to import. So this is our project with our multicam that we're going to make. And we're going to go to the folder that I set up for you. So project 5, and then I've got wide angle, angle 3, 2, main angle 1. I don't know why it's all out of order, but whatever. Import selected. And so this will have all of the files that you need. And when you do that, it should have them all set up here with these wonderful keys. Now, in this other project multicam, I had already set it up where I had the original file system that I used. So this was basically just to make my point. What's really important here is that you know that when you do this, what you're going to want to do before you start syncing everything is you want to make sure that you get the audio from the night of live into each of those keys. So for the sake of showing you, I'm going to drag in the audio. I'm going to click and drag into every single key that I'm about to go through. So the main angle and the wide angle. So now when I look at angle 1, all of the clips and the audio that I need are all together. So I'm going to click, I'm going to go to the bottom, hold shift, click, and then I can synchronize a new clip. Thankfully, I've already done all of that, so we can fast forward through all of that stuff now. What we really need to do now is we need to make a new multicam. So I'm going to select angle 3, angle 1, the wide angle, the main angle, and my clip from last time. So this week is going to be a little bit more intense, but not terribly. Now that we've got all of our angles selected, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create new multicam clip. So I'm going to call this nothing compares multi. Now the same thing has to happen again where Final Cut is going to listen to the audio from all of the individual multicam clips and figure out where on the timeline they all need to end up. Unlike a normal timeline where Final Cut kind of wants everything to stay connected to the front and build from 0, in a multicam, because the first clip is going to be the thing that ends up on 0, it will create gaps or kind of non-existent gaps. Basically, it will just make sure everything lines up. So what you'll see in here is the clip from last week where it was synced to the entire audio from live is going to be the thing that shows up the longest. And then everything else is going to have to be moved back on top of where Nothing Compares the song actually ended up on the recording from the board. So it's about, 15 minutes in, because Brother Pedigo spoke and Brother Mooney spoke and they did that song and all that stuff. And then the concert really started. So whatever they're recording, it's waiting until it hears like, oh, here's the song and that audio matches all of these ones. So then they're all going to line up however they match up with the audio. And now I'm just going to sit here and wait for it. So stupid cat was playing with a crab. The crab got freaked out. Okay, so now our multicam is done and we can drag it into the timeline. Now, just like last time, it started at the beginning of the concert and then it's all this other stuff. Also, you'll notice that whatever angle is actually selected for the first angle is the one that's going to show up for the entire multicam because we haven't made any cuts between angles now. So it's all black. I'm going to take a wild guess and say this little spot here where there's actually audio showing up is where Nothing Compares falls. But what we need to do right now is we need to open up the multicam and start making some cuts to make everything a little more concise. So I'm going to double click, and now you can see all of our angles stacked on top of each other. And like I said, this is all the beginning of the concert, and it's about 14 minutes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here where the wide angle starts off. That didn't work out right. There we go. Okay, so now I've deleted that, and then the wide angle goes, I think, for 2 songs. So I'm going to use that tip from last time where I'm going to look for the audio to completely die out because that's probably the end of the song. Yep, so I'm going to look for this spot where it touches the bottom, and then I'm going to do this for both of them. I'm just going to cut and then delete the ends of these because we don't need any of that. Now, a couple of things inside the multicam. This is a pretty cool setup. So all of these angles are still synced clips if you did it right, which of course you did. Of course you did it right. You're my students. You guys are amazing. So what's going to happen is inside this folder, I like to think of these as folders. Like a multicam is like a folder, usually of synchronized clips. And so inside the synchronized clip is a bunch of other little clips. And then inside of the multicam is a bunch of those synchronized clips. So it's just this big clipception thing. And it's cool, but it can be a lot. So this is how I keep my head on straight. I start with 1, right? So this one, because this is the only one that I haven't done anything to yet, I'm going to show you something really cool starting out. These things over here, let's get rid of the effects tab. These things over here on the side, these little 3 bars, if you click and drag these, you can actually change the order of them. And that doesn't seem super important until you bring up your viewer. So Command-Shift-7. Now watch this. I'm going to grab this one synchronized clip and I'm going to move it. And now it went from, so let's just move it around a little bit. All right, now it's there. Now it's there. So I'm going to move it to the first one. Now, part of the reason that this is important is because what's actually going to happen here, if you notice over here, these 2 buttons are very important. It's the video monitoring and the audio monitoring buttons. You can use this drop-down menu if you want to do, so like let's say we want to set this one. Set monitoring angle. So now this is our monitoring angle. So anytime that we play, this is the angle that we see. If we want to switch to the main angle being the monitoring angle, we can either do set monitoring angle, or you can just click on each of these little iMac looking button things. But the thing about that is that this is what's dangerous about that. This is a great tool and it can help you keep things selected the way you want them to, but it can also mess you up really bad. So I have this set here, right? But if I select angle 1 on accident and I still have this synchronized clip set as my monitoring angle inside the multicam, and I go to do something like what you're going to do, which is color grading stuff, and I do some weird stuff to the, so like let's say I pull the shadows way up. You can see on angle 1, I've turned it white because it's all black. But I don't see any of the changes that I'm making because I'm monitoring this one, MVI966, whoa, easy there, synchronized clip. But if I select this one and I go over, oh, look at this. Now I'm seeing what I'm doing. You have to be careful when you select and you monitor. It's 2 different things, but this is how you can A and B things back and forth. So let's say we've got a spot where we want to compare these 2. So I'm going to click this one and I'm going to put the shadows back where they're supposed to be. What I want to do is I want to find a spot where angle 1 and the other one are synchronized. Okay, so now they're playing at the same time. If I switch these back and forth, like which one I'm monitoring, this helps me see if I've got the color grade the same, if that makes sense. We did something for a virtual rally, and I wanted to make sure all the shots matched, but somebody used auto white balance or something, things can just happen. And you have to make little adjustments to make it all look the same. So what you'll do is, I think the exposure on the shadows is a little too low, and then I want to pull the mids back down, and maybe a little bit of the highlights, and then I'm going to up the saturation a little. but now I feel like the exposure of the shadow is too dark still. So I'm going to play with this until I'm happy with it, and then I'm going to go and monitor over to this one. If I go back and forth, like clearly the saturation on this is all wrong. Like there's no saturation in this whatsoever, but you need to get your light right first. So the highlights are too high, the shadows are too low. So let's play with this a little bit and see if we can get this done. I'm going to bump the saturation now. Now I see some weird magenta stuff in the skin tone. I'm not going to ask you to do that. If you want to do it, kudos to you. You can have bonus points or whatever. So let's say you want to do that. I'm going to go into the hue and saturation curves. I'll show you how to do this. Hue versus hue here. What this does is you can select a hue or a color, and then because this one is versus hue or against hue, what you're going to do is this node here that it creates actually changes that specific color you selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that color and I'm going to move it a little bit down more towards the yellow tones because that makes the skin tone look more natural. I like that. I think it looks better. And then I might bring the luminosity down just a bit because when things are too bright, they lose color information. So I want to bring some of that color information back so their faces don't look all bleached out. That looks better. Now let's monitor back over. It's not bad. It's pretty close. I feel like this clip actually looks darker. So I'm going to go into the exposure here. I'm going to bring this up a little bit more. I might actually bring the highlights back up on this. Okay. It's a little better. Okay, so now this is an R, I believe. And so the color science on this is a little different. And I feel like I can just bring the mids down a little bit and actually pop the highlights up a little bit, maybe even shadows down. But the skin tone is different. So I'm going to grab the hue and I'm actually going to push this back towards magenta a little bit. Just a little bit. And here's a cool thing. If you feel like you've done too much, and you are trying to make really slight adjustments and you feel like you just can't make it slight enough, down here at the bottom, you can actually mix in how much. So like, let's say I do something really drastic and it's like, oh, you look like Reverse Hulk. You're really purple. You look like Barney. I can actually like turn it down a little bit by mixing in the original footage with what I did here in this specific thing, hue and saturation curves. Like you can add multiple boards and things like that, like in layers. So if you feel like you want to like slighten up, that's not something people say. If you want to make what you're doing a little more gentle, so I try to be pretty gentle in my color grading. But sometimes I feel like I just can't make that small of an adjustment on this screen. I'll use the mix to kind of dial that back and make the adjustment even softer. So I'll just go back down. Now, remember, be careful when you select something. So if I select main angle and I see things like this and I start doing crazy stuff and I'm like, why isn't this working? I feel like it's not doing anything. Oh, I have this selected and then I wasn't monitoring. Now this looks horrible. What did I do? So just be careful. So once you get done with that, that's pretty much all I'm going to have you do is I want you to build your multicam and then I want you to try to color match them all to each other. Make your general adjustments at this synchronized clip level. So as you're going, you can make these adjustments and see like, okay, this is too bright. So maybe just this one needs to come down a little bit. But only after you've done your initial edit. So I've got this edit going on here where I've got the mids pulled down to pull back some of that detail. So just to clarify, we are going to do edits at multiple levels, but we're not going to have to do anything at the multi-level. I just want you to understand how to operate inside a multi-cam. So really, like, all you're looking for is this little section of the multi-cam right here, because this is the song. So it's just this one song. Now see, those highlights are too high. This looks kind of blown out. So let's get inside and see what's wrong. This is the one that we're monitoring, this synchronized clip here. So let's check it out. And where is it? That's weird. That doesn't look like the right angle. So let's figure out what angle it was. Oh, wait. For the sake of this lesson, it was easier for me to just use clips that I had already like bound together from last time. But this is something where it's like, oh, okay, we need to like adjust this individual clip because it looks really bad. Like all I did was pull the midtones down and some of the highlights, and it made it look so much better. So what you're going to do is you're going to make your initial edit where you're just going to, like we did here, the very first set of clips, we just kind of went down the list and it was like, okay, that looks good. All we did on this clip was what? A little bit. So we raised the shadows, the highlights very slightly, and then we dropped the midtones 43%. And then we'll go down to angle 1. Angle 1 looks pretty good. We did some midtones down, highlights down, and shadows up just a little bit. This angle looks like it actually needs some shadows pulled down now that I'm like looking at it compared to the other ones. So I'm going to pull the shadows down a little bit. I'm going to bring the midtones back up just a little bit. Maybe I'll bring them down again. That looks better. The blues seem to pop more in this. It's almost like the temperature's a little weird. So maybe I'll do a little color wheel. I'll take the temperature up just a little bit to kind of match everything else. Now let's look at the main angle. Main angle looks good. Okay, so let's go to wide angle. Wide angle looks good. We didn't even do anything to it. But to be fair, I had already done stuff to it in this one. So let's just raise the highlights a little bit just to say we did something. But if we get down, down in here somewhere and then something doesn't look right. So like, let's say we go to angle, the synchronized one. This is one where I would say, you would probably want to have upped. So on this synchronized clip, I would go ahead and once I get my exposure set the way I want it, bump the saturation a bit. Now I liked the saturation on the other ones. So it seems like this clip in particular is the problem. So I'm going to go inside and I'm going to bump the saturation just a little bit more on this particular clip. So when I back out, hopefully, not bad. I think that's better. It might be a little too much sometimes. Sometimes you might have to go back in and do that again. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to do what you did last week with your set of clips, but you're going to build a multicam. And then when you go inside the multicam, you're going to do what you did last week to all 5 of them and try to get them all to match. It shouldn't be that bad once you get your general edit done. So once you get all of them to kind of look the same, you're just going to have to look through them and see like which ones are kind of poking out like, oh, that one's overexposed. Let's go in and fix that one. That one's underexposed. Let's bring that up a little bit. But here's the thing. This is the last one for multicams. Once you've done this, you know how to work a multicam. So I want to show you like one last thing to kind of really wrap up why it's important to do this kind of editing inside the multicam. You can switch back and forth between monitoring like this, and anything that you do to these is going to show up top level. Sometimes I would like to add a LUT to the top, but I actually found out that when you're cutting between these angles, it only saves what you do to different angles. So watch this. If I'm on the main angle, right, and I have this custom LUT here, Explorer Teal. So like, let's delete that. Let's just start over. So let's say, okay, I've got this angle, looks really cool, but I think it needs more color. So I'm going to add a custom LUT to it. And then I'm just going to go to my classic Explorer Teal. Boom. Looks cool. Skin tone looks fire. Let's go. Whoa, that's extreme. Looks really good, right? Now let's cut to the wide angle. Okay. So now we're over here in this wide angle. Where's the LUT? It's not there because you did it to this angle. So when you're cutting between those angles, you're actually cutting between those strips of video. So it's honestly easier for you to just do it all inside the multicam and get it all right inside the multicam. So let's go inside and let's undo that cut because I don't want to make this confusing. You want to get your color grading right before you do all of your other stuff. So when you're going back and forth and like switching your monitoring, it really is important for you to go in and make those adjustments so that they all look the same. Because if you try to do stuff top level it's going to get confusing really fast. And it's better to just make your source look as close to the other ones as possible than to try to make those last minute corrections on top. This is where you want to get it right. So have fun. This is your last project on multicams, so hit it hard. I know you can do this, and I'll see you next week.